Hi, friends. Welcome to the library. I have with me today Author Chrystal Miller, and I'm super excited because I love your work. I am a junkie, so I'm really excited to get to talk to you about everything. Um, I want to say you're broken. The Lakewood series. I'm gonna cry.
It's funny. Today is actually 2 years today since I started writing Broken, and 1 year today since I finished writing Bound. Um,
Oh my gosh.
I am working on Breathless, Callum's story, but I keep having to put it down because I'm not
Mm,
going to lie, Callum's in a very dark place when his book starts.
yeah.
And his love interest, whom I don't like a lot of readers still haven't picked up after reading Bound who his love interest is. So I kind of want to leave that as a surprise. But you have met her. She has appeared in
Okay.
Bound. Um,
Noted.
so, but she's also in a very dark place. And Breathless is going to be about their individual growth and how they heal each other from their own traumas and from their
Mm,
own inner demons.
that's so beautiful. I love that. And I actually was just talking to my husband about um healing inner trauma and doing that with one another, and he was like, I tried, therapy when I was younger cuz he had a rough childhood, and he was like it didn't do it for me. And I was like, well, therapy is not for everybody, and everybody has their own version of therapy. Like, it's always good to have somebody to talk to, and sometimes it's really beneficial for you to have an actual therapist because they need that person who's
Yeah.
been trained. But then sometimes you just need a spouse or someone you're
Yeah.
close to that you can talk to and work through it, and they can give you their experiences, and you sometimes just letting it off your chest. And some people, they're religious and they pray and they do that, and that works for them, or
Mhm.
they journal. For me, I learned that when it's a tough situation, like, I can journal and write it down, and then I have to leave it. Like, I have to put it somewhere and let go of it for a while, and then I'll run into it after 6 months or a year, and then I can have that conversation with my husband or one of my friends, and it does it. Or I'll read something in a
Yeah.
book, and I'm like, "That
See,
does it.
and Broken
I'm
started
better."
out as journal entries. Broken started out as a therapy tool, and I would write short stories based on my own childhood and my own traumas, and then it just ended up becoming Broken. And it's
Yeah.
so, yeah, I get that. I'm not gonna lie, I go to a therapist. I see a therapist once a week,
Yeah.
and she's my lifesaver. She really is. And it's sometimes I feel like I'd be kind of lost without her. Because, like, my husband, he doesn't go to therapy. He doesn't feel he needs it. And like you said, it's not for everyone. He deals with his stuff
Mm,
in a different way. Me, I need her to talk to because even though I tell my husband everything, I need someone who's not emotionally invested in my emotions,
mhm.
to give more of
Yep.
a clear
100%.
understanding.
Yeah, I
And
get that. So, Broken, I'm gonna assume Bound was the
Bound
same. There's some emotional, or
Bound
is it
was
a
a
little
little
bit
bit
different?
different. Bound was still very emotional, but it was a different side, and that's what I really love about my Lakewood series is it's each one of the characters, Sinclair, Mia, Callum, and so the fourth and final book is, and I have not had I have told everyone this, the fourth and final book is going to be titled Brave, and it's about Tess and Danielle, because from day one they were destined They're destined, okay?
They have this chemistry, that
Yes,
chemistry.
and
Oh,
I do explore that more in Breathless, um, the chemistry between the 2 of them, because they're meant to be, and, Danielle is really struggling with who she is, and Tess is kind of that confidence that I know who I am, I know what I am, and I'm proud. And, I've had these incredible people in my life who have encouraged me to be myself unapologetically. Um,
mhm.
Tess is kind of the female version of my husband. and, and it's like because he's encouraged me to be, he's the reason I'm writing. He so I worked at a bookstore, at a nationwide big bookstore. I'm not going to name names, give them credit, because my store manager was an absolute jerk. But I
Ooh.
loved my other coworkers, the assistant manager, and he had his good moments, but he was very misogynistic and very controlling.
Mm.
And but I went to a book signing, a Stephanie Garber book signing, and Stephanie is one of the sweetest people. I see her books in your background. I have
Yes,
I have
she's right
all of them
there.
signed because I've been to every single one of her signings. But, I went to one of her book signings, and I came home that night, and my husband looks at me, and, he's sitting in bed waiting for me to come home because it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And he's like, "You write so much." He goes, "You're always writing, and you're always sitting here reading books and reading other people's books. Why haven't you published? Why haven't you written a book yourself?" And I looked at him like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "I don't have time." And he's like, "Then quit your job." And I'm like, "For real?" And
We love the enabler,
and
okay?
so I wrote Broken. I went working part-time because I didn't want to quit my job. I mean, I worked in a bookstore. For a reader and a writer,
Yeah,
working in a bookstore, you really can't get much. That's like a dream.
no.
And
Yeah,
I
for sure.
after Broken published, and I was it was so hard to put it out there and still find time to work and find time to write. So I quit. He was like, "You're stressed." He goes, "You're miserable. It's time for you to quit." And so I took my husband's advice. I quit my job and right away started working on Bound, and then jumped into I haven't finished it because the first part was in an anthology that unfortunately didn't do so well. I loved the anthology and I loved the other stories in it, and I'm really sad that it didn't do as well as we had all hoped. But it was a twisted fairy tale anthology, and I wrote
Mm,
it is a mafia it has mafia vibes. It's a Wizard of Oz retelling, and it's Why Choose. And I love it because Dot, the main female character, she is demisexual, which is somewhat
mhm,
on the asexual spectrum. So there are not a lot of books out there that portray that demographic, and it's probably one of the most common. People just don't understand it and don't know
mhm,
what it is. And um I was talking to some friends who are in that, do um identify as demi, and it just turned into the most perfect character that I've ever written. And I got to finish that book. I do plan on finishing it, but I really wanted to write the secrets that we keep and the lies that we tell. I wanted to write something just fun and a little dark. But after I finished Lies, I came up with this. Oh, what I'm working on now is really dark. I have not announced the title yet, but if you would, I will announce it here. It is called Vegas. The series is The Cities of Mayhem. There are 4 books. It's about a mafia family slash secret society that quietly runs most of the country, at least like the shady things, like the illegal things. So Vegas is the first book,
Yeah.
Memphis is the second, Brooklyn is the third, and Aspen, my female badass, she is the fourth. And
I'm like fangirling over here.
I will tell you,
Yes.
in the first chapter, there is a very graphic torture scene. So I went from having sex in the first chapter to torturing in the first chapter.
I'm here for it. Let me tell you what, I am probably any author that stems on the dark side of fantasy, romance, anything like that. I am probably their dream reader because I have virtually no
I love
triggering aspects. So anything I read, I'm just like full send. I don't need the list. I love that you made the list. It's not for
the
me. I
list
don't
is
care
just
what
a
it is.
menu.
I'm going in.
It's just a menu of like, okay, I
Right.
like
Yeah.
this. I like,
It's
yep, totally reading it.
yep.
Right?
It's
It is.
advertising.
For me, the longer the
Straight
trigger
advertising.
list, the more I'm going to want to read it. The only thing that I
Mhm.
cannot stomach is harm towards children. But
Yeah, that
if there's something
one.
like that in a book, I'll just skim over it or just skip the pages when I come to it. Um, I hate
Mhm.
writing trigger warnings, to be honest. I feel like
There
I feel like just a general warning that there may be some things in books that you might not be comfortable with is good, but I really feel that
Mhm.
it kind of spoils the books. And for indie authors, writing a full trigger list can actually damage their visibility because Amazon looks like their algorithm looks for these trigger words and will put it in adult content, and then a lot of authors don't get seen because of it. So I've started just putting
Mhm.
QR codes to my website for the book at the beginning of each book, being like, okay, go to my website. Here's the link. Here's here's the QR code. If if you want to know what this book contains, go here, so I've started doing that.
That's
Yeah,
smart
I
though.
thanks.
It's really
But
smart.
I am a huge fantasy reader as well. Like I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking around and I have more dark fantasy than I do anything else. I can't write dark fantasy. There's so much world building that it's
Mhm.
like some of these dark fantasy authors that I've read, like, I love Sarah J. Moss, which I see her in your background as well.
Mhm.
And I love
Mhm.
Jennifer Armentrout, and they're just so
Mhm.
incredible with the world building, so talented. And it's like I don't know that I can do that. It takes like such a creative imagination. And I just like I have an imagination. I have a very vivid imagination, but I don't think I have the patience to sit there and build an entire world from scratch.
Hmm. I I think you do. I think it's one of those like it takes the amount of
Yes.
planning that takes and forethought that takes. I would be exhausted just completely exhausted trying to do that because I cannot imagine writing 3 separate series like
Right?
Moth has, and all of it being like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, this is connected, but not connected, but it'll get there," and there are so
The
many, and I'm like, "I don't."
foreshadowing in her Throne of Glass series for Crescent City was like incredible. I I
Mhm,
couldn't believe that, like, I had to go back and reread the Throne of Glass series, and I'm not one to go back and there's not very many books that I go back and reread. But
mm,
after finishing the third Crescent City book, I had to go back and reread Throne of Glass because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there it's all there."
yeah. Okay, so I did the ACOTAR series, and then I went to start collecting Throne of Glass, and I got them all collected, and I have everything except for the very last Crescent Cities because I'm really weird. I want them all in the same, like it's only
Yeah,
in hardback unless you get it from Amazon, and it
yeah,
takes a while right now. So I'm like, I'm not ready to get the third one, but I can't. I'm like, you're gonna do it. I'm pep talking myself. You're gonna read them. You're gonna do
yeah,
it. And then I never. And I think it's because there's so much stigma around what order to
yeah,
read them in. There's a lot of stigma, and in like it's like an argument. In my brain, I want to read. My brain is like, you need it in order, so you
mhm,
need to read Assassin's Blade first because it'll
yeah,
make better sense for you. But then my heart's like, no, do it in the way that it's gonna wreck you, and I'm
yeah.
like,
See, I my
I'm
and
so
those I know a
torn.
lot of people. I have some friends who will tandem read. Like, there's a list where you can tandem
Mhm.
read certain books of hers. And I'm like, I can't do that. My ADHD will not allow me to read two books at once. My ADHD doesn't allow me let me write two books at once.
See, mine is the opposite. I will start and then stop
Oh my
10 at a
goodness. I
time.
can't. Yeah.
Like, I it's one of those, like, it doesn't like, it's not that it doesn't hold my interest, but I'll get to a point like, for example, I read a lot of dark romance, dark fantasy, so I'll get to a point where, like, okay, this I need to take a pause on, and I'm like, I'm gonna try to pick up something else, and then I'll get through it, and it'll get to a particular portion where it's like maybe the plot has slowed down, or maybe it's building up to something and I'm not quite ready for it, and I can feel that I'm not ready for it, and then I'll put it down and step over to something else, which is why I have told myself that if I feel like I need to put something down because of plot or because I'm not ready to get to where it's going, because you typically know where it's going,
Yeah.
you get an idea. I'll start reading
Oh, hey, that's a
novellas
good idea.
because I know I can finish it, so I get the serotonin of
Yeah.
completing and knocking something off my list or off my Kindle, and I'm not sucked into a whole
Yeah.
600-page novel or a whole new
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, I get that. It makes sense. That's I'm gonna try that actually. See if that, like, cause that's kind of like a palate cleanser. Oh, I like that.
Mhm. Yep. And I'll do any novella. So it doesn't matter if it I for me, it doesn't matter if
Hmm.
it's holiday themed or not. I'll do holiday themed. I'll do whether it's actual, like, straight up erotica or if it's just like, a little meet
Yeah.
cute or something like that. It doesn't have to be anything specific, and it's really great whenever I finish a series and I get into a slump because I can pick up any novella and I finish it, and then I'm back into the role of I wanna read again. I'm not quite as stuck, and I know friends that a lot of people will get through some series and will be in that, "I'm in a book slump, I can't figure out what I wanna read, I don't know where I am," and I'm like, I keep hundreds of novellas on
Yeah.
my Kindle for that reason
That's a
right
good
there.
idea. That's smart. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll go
it's
back and
helpful.
I'll pick something up that is out of my genre that I typically read because
Mm,
I love romance. I absolutely love romance and I love horror. Um, but I was in a slump and picked up The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, which
Mm,
actually ended up being my absolute favorite book ever written. And I am a diehard Anne Rice girl. I have read every single one of her books.
mhm.
I ugly cried when she passed away. I've been reading her since I was 11 or 12 years old.
I gotta show you this. I got this from Barnes& and
Oh,
Noble.
yes. I
It is the Vampire Chronicles, and it has Interview with the Vampire
the
Lestat, and the Queen of the
original
Damned.
first four.
It is
Oh, it doesn't have Tale
so
of the Body Thief,
oh my
though,
gosh, it
does
is
it?
so gorgeous.
Okay.
Mm-mm, nope.
It's
But it's I
beautiful.
mean, it's a humongous, and it's got these beautiful gold
Oh, I
edges.
have it on a shelf where I can't reach because it's so one of my most cherished books is a first edition paperback copy of The Witching Hour. And it's sitting next
Oh
to
my
my first
goodness.
edition copy of The Wizard of Oz, which is my favorite children's book.
Oh
Now
my
both books
gosh.
are not. I've had that copy of The Witching Hour since that book
Mhm.
came out. I got it at a Kmart when it released. And
That's
it
crazy.
was it's a mass market paperback, so it's, smaller. It's like
Mhm.
this size. Another one of my favorite authors, Laura K. Hamilton.
Yeah, just a little bit
Yeah,
bigger than your hand,
but
yeah.
I got it when they first published that specific size. 1990 something, when I was like 12 or 13 years old.
Mhm.
Um, and I've had it ever since. So it's as torn up as like it's been through the ringer. um, it
So
is
well loved.
it
It's
is
well
very well
loved.
loved, and so it sits on a little display stand on a shelf that is too high for my cats to reach. Because
Eh.
my cats love books as much as I do. They'll come in here and they'll climb on my lower bookshelves, and I don't know how they squeeze themselves in between the top part of the shelf, like the underside of the top of the shelf and the books. But I have four cats, and I will come into my office and find all four of them on a different part of the shelf laying across the tops of different books, and I'm like, what in the world?
They're just
Yep.
taking a nap.
Enjoying the
It's
smell,
cozy.
because books do have, like, they do have a smell, and I love that smell.
That smell, oh my
And
gosh.
um
My only other favorite smell aside from, like, a book or a bookstore is, like,
yes,
leather.
me too.
I was I was a softball player in high
Okay.
through middle school and high school, and the smell of, like, a fresh mink oiled glove, or, like, you walk into a boot store and it just smells like leather, and I'm like, "I'm at home.
Yep.
This is" it's like
Yep,
a
I love
hug.
going into the boot barn just to get that leather smell.
My husband told me not too long ago, he was like, "I need a new belt," and I was like, "To Boot Barn we go, like, I'm coming with. You don't need me, but I'm
Yep.
coming." The
I
smell.
saw one,
That's
and I'd
crazy.
have to look on Instagram. I sent it to my husband on Instagram. It's this leather belt, and on the inside, I told him, I go, I'm getting you this for our anniversary, which is in May. Um, I mean, it's the funniest thing, and he just cracked up laughing, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll wear it. I'll wear it." And it says, hold on, it says, "Congrats on being my husband, you lucky bastard. Think of me whenever you take this belt off. I love you." And so I'm like, I
Oh.
keep teasing him because he doesn't have any tattoos. I've got
Mhm,
four and working on getting another one. Um, but they're really expensive. And he told me I have to spend my royalties on
mhm.
tattoos now. Now that he paid for me and my daughter to get a tattoo for her 18th birthday, and he's like, well, these are expensive. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, okay, you know what? You got to save some of that book money. I'm like, all right, I can do that. um, You
Nope,
know,
not
so yeah, so I'm like, "But I'm gonna tattoo my name across your butt." And he goes, "No, you're not." So my husband is, um he's in law enforcement, and he's an instructor at the academy, and
Mhm,
he's the head of the PT unit for his department. So he's the sergeant who is in charge of training, physically training all the cadets, and he works out every day and he showers every day with
mhm.
all these, with his other officers. And I'm always teasing him, yeah, I'm gonna tattoo my name on your butt so that they know who you belong to. I'm gonna put property of
I know.
Crystal.
Yeah.
And we were we were with one of his friends, one of his another officer and his wife, and the officer was like, "Well, I want my name tattooed on his butt then too." And I'm like, "Yes." And so, eventually, and that might happen. And of course, I'll share it with all of my readers when it does, because but I'm working on getting my first bookish tattoo. I have a guy who does my tattoos, and I'm very excited. So, if any of the listeners have any ideas they would like to share with me, I would be thrilled, because I am very one of the reasons why we haven't done it yet is because I'm indecisive. But he
Oh,
is designing. I spoke to him last night and he was so thrilled. And I'm going to put a QR code in this next series for him. If anyone's in California, specifically like the Sacramento area, and would like to check him out, he is designing a custom tattoo for this new series for my guys in the series, so that it is their tattoo. And I'm really excited. When I texted him and was like, "Hey, I have this idea," like I could totally go to, get covers or another book cover designer or any graphic designer and pay them a ton of money to have this done. What would you charge me to do this? And he's like, I'll do it. I'd love to do it. And so he's working on it.
that's
And,
great.
I'm like, fantastic. I go make a QR code for your website. I'm gonna make sure everyone knows where the design came from and who to go to. And he's like,
Yeah. Look, now I'm gonna be like, all right, we gotta plan. I'm gonna tell my husband we gotta plan a trip to
yes.
Sacramento. Listen, this is important. This is important. I don't even need to know anything about the series. I want the
Well, the
tattoo.
series.
I don't need to.
Well, and
It's
I
fine.
don't mind sharing. Like I have always been a pantster when I write. So basically, I write just on a whim without any planning.
Hmm.
Um, but this series I have plotted out because it's out of my comfort zone. Um, and like same with my secrets and lies duet. I writing Why Choose was probably the hardest thing. I'm very OCD. I do have diagnosed OCD, but that's beside the point. But I'm very particular in books that I read and also books that I write with spatial awareness. And I struggled with the spatial awareness and and lies. I don't know if you've read it yet, but
Not yet. I have it. We're almost there.
it's I'm very proud of it. I will say, going back and reading it, after it was edited and after, like, I read it the first night it was published, um, and there's a lot that I feel that I could have added to the book. Like, I really wanted to dive into Devin's backstory. I absolutely love Devin. He's got to be one of my favorite characters that I've written. Um, but I feel like I didn't do him the justice that I could have done because I didn't really get into his backstory. But it is so dark, and he feels so responsible for everything that happened to his sister that it would have been it would have been very taxing on my mental health to get to really dive into.
Mhm.
But looking back, I wish that I had. So don't be surprised if, if at some point I do a special edition with some backstory and some, flashbacks written in. I do plan on doing that with the Lakewood series. I have a little short story written that has yet to be edited and published. And it is one of my favorite scenes between Sinclair and Noah. And the reason why it's not edited and published yet is because it's a tearjerker. It's, because I mean, you read
Mhm.
Broken, so you know what happens at the end.
Mhm.
And I actually had readers reaching out to me after Broken published, very upset with me because they love Noah so much.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, sorry,
My
but that's I meant for that. I wanted, like, I loved Noah. Noah's just one of those characters that you love, but it's one of those loves that you have to let go. And I'm like,
Mhm.
so the short story is one of Sinclair's many accidental fires that she set. Because I mean, in both Broken and Bound, you hear a lot about how Sinclair had a habit of setting fires. She
Little
is. She's my
pyro.
favorite little pyro. And so, yeah. And um so it's I don't want to give away details, because I do genuinely plan within before this time in 2025 publishing that. But I wanted
Mm.
to publish it with when as I finished the series, just be like, hey, check this out. A little bonus for you guys because I love everyone. And Broken and Bound, the whole Lakewood series is genuinely a part of me. I joke with my kids because my whole we're a family of nerds. Like if you read
Mm.
my little biography in the back of my books, I admit I love a good RPG. I love a good fantasy. We've already we already dove into our love for fantasy.
Yes.
I read the Harry Potter series to my kids, and I joke with my kids. I'm like, my Lakewood series is like my Horcrux. Each one is a little bit of it's a little bit of my soul going into these books. Like I said with Broken, um, it was a therapy, tool at first. So there's a lot of scenes in there that I took and embellished. I did embellish because for the sake of fiction, but there's a lot of scenes in there from my own childhood. The scene in Broken where Sinclair's flashback where she's listening to music and washing the dishes. Um, I have I have no shame in admitting that that was directly taken from an incident in my childhood. And but I love that. I love that I was able to take those moments and turn them into something beautiful. Sinclair got her happy ending. My mom passed away suddenly right before I started writing Broken. And the letters that Sinclair's mother leaves her. So there were 2 letters in the book, and I just recently found
Mhm.
out last month when I ordered a new stack of books, was a printing issue. One of the letters didn't make it into these new printed copies, and which makes me
Oh,
really
no.
sad. So I contacted KDP, and they're working on fixing that, and they said I might need to re-upload the, PDF, which that's okay. I'll do that this week. But I was really sad because, um when I wrote the letters, they were all the things that I wish my mom had said to me before she passed away. There was a lot of, and this is one reason why I do go to therapy. There's a lot of unfinished, or a lot of loose ends, unfinished things, and unsaid
Mm.
words. And that is that's why my Lakewood series is and will always have a special place in my heart. I know a lot of indie authors who go back and do remastered copies of their original series. And I won't do that with the Lakewood series. I might do that with Secrets and Lies and maybe even Cities of Mayhem. And, you know, maybe even like For Love of the, I don't know if you read my novella For Love of the Hunt, my Halloween novella. I do
Yes.
plan on writing a full
Mhm.
length novel for that. That was my, like, dipping my toes
Ooh.
in the whole why choose thing. So I do plan on writing a full length novel for that, and I may even, go back and redo that one at some point. But my Lakewood series is going to be rough. And I mean, each book gets better because because as we write, we improve. The more you do something, the better you get.
Oh, yeah.
And but it's just, it is what it is. It's a piece of my soul and it's a piece of my heart. And I can't imagine it being any other way than what it is. Um, if you didn't get to read that second letter, I'll email it to you today. I'll send it to you so you can read it. Um,
Okay. I don't know if I did or not. It was on my Kindle, so I'll have
I
to check.
think they're on the Kindle. Like, that's what is so weird, is because the version I have on my Kindle is one of the original, like, is the original version of the book. So I don't think that it got removed from Kindle. I think that it's just the paperback, or at least the
Hmm.
10 copies that I ordered last month that didn't have it, which is really disappointing.
Mhm.
But because I took those to Vegas with me last
They
month, and I left
Oh,
copies at like 4 different hotels, like, just free copies with bookmarks.
that would be upsetting. Yeah. KDP has been on it
Yeah.
recently. They have them and just all the things that they're doing. First of all, I I did I chose personally to unsubscribe
Uh-huh.
from KU. It is beneficial for me monetary wise because I read so much, but I know that most authors benefit better if I buy the
Yes.
Kindle or the paper book
Yes.
outright, or if they're wide and on like something like Kobo, where they pay their authors a little bit more.
Ooh,
So I went that route because Kobo actually is one, they pay their authors more per page read, I think is the breakdown for them as well. But I also noticed that for their subscribers, it is a dollar or two cheaper to bundle their audio and their
oh,
ebook subscription versus just having a KU subscription because KU and Audible are separate
yes, they are.
subscriptions.
Oh, I did not know.
So I saw that. Yeah. And Kobo is the same way. Like you can get a Kobo reader just like you can get a
Uh-huh. Oh,
Kindle, or you can just use their app. So yeah, I chose to keep my Kobo and and I'm in enough Facebook groups and wishlist Wednesday situations, Fairy Fridays that we play games whenever Kindle does like double or triple points
okay.
for ebooks. So I can post and I can buy others and they can buy for me.
Yeah.
So it works out. I end up getting a lot of those ebooks anyways.
Okay.
So that's what I personally chose that. And I because I know that there are a lot of authors like Lauren
Mhm.
Beale and some others that have been having content issues with Amazon either banning their books or not allowing certain versions to be available. Because I think she has one that's called Captured, and she can't sell the ebook, but through her own personal, I think it's like Abe Books or something like that, like a third party website to get the ebook, or through hers so that she can send you the actual EPUB or PDF. Um, so they only allow the actual paperback on
Okay.
Amazon for Captured.
Oh. See, Lauren Beale,
Yeah.
she is one of the authors
She,
who um I hadn't heard of her. This was a couple years ago. I think this was right before I started writing. And in one of my reader groups, something was said about a negative review she got for Hitched because of the content.
mhm.
And I was like, I need that book. And it was, I have no regrets.
Oh my gosh. So I buddy read Captured. I'm just going to tell you, Captured is probably the darkest or the second darkest. It's a very dark,
Yeah.
dark book. Like
And
it
I love
is.
books like that.
First of all, I had never heard of her until I was part of a Facebook group. I was part of the admin, and we were going to do an author interview with Lauren, and some things happened, so we didn't actually end up doing it, but I did end up buddy reading Captured, and it just so happens that my friend and I chose Captured because we like dark romance, and Captured is her darkest book
Okay,
she's
I
ever
am
written.
adding that to my
And
Kindle
I was like,
right
we're starting
now.
at the very end.
I because so and I love I'm gonna say I love Luna Pierce. I love her books. I'm
Hmm.
reading Untamed Vixen,
Ooh, that
but
one's
I'm
good.
struggling because the beginning is just hard for, and I find that with
Yeah.
a lot of books and a lot of authors that I absolutely love and have, you know, immense respect for. But um
Mhm.
sometimes I struggle to, and it's because of my ADHD. I struggle to get into the book in the beginning. And so I'm like, I'm powering through this one because I know it's going to be good. A personal friend recommended it to me because she knows my taste in books. And
Mhm.
she's like, and so I started writing Vegas. I'm about almost three quarters of the way through writing this the Cities of Mayhem series.
Mhm.
And I was telling her about it. And she's like, oh my God, you have to read um Untamed Vixen. And I was like, okay. So I start
Mhm.
reading it and I'm like, I like this. I liked chapter one. I liked the beginning. I loved that bathroom scene. And that was just like, I'm like, yes, this is my book. But now I'm like, okay. I'm like, I need, you know, I keep losing my focus. And so
Mhm.
I'm adding that book to my Kindle right now so that that's my next read.
I can tell you what, for anybody who's listening, and even you, if anybody has read Jennifer
Mhm.
Hartman, Still Beating, it's that, but more. That's how I explain it to people. I'm like, if you've read Still Beating and you need more of a little bit of all of it, you're gonna
Okay.
get that in this. Like it's my heart. And so I have friends that are like, um, they I love HD
Oh,
with
I
everything
love
I
her.
have. With
You know, and
everything, with everything I have.
it really
And
makes me mad that she gets so much hate for her husband cosplaying her characters, but I love that. I absolutely love
I
that,
love
and
it.
I was telling my husband about it, and he's like, "Don't get any ideas," and I'm like, "But babe," and he's
Please.
and he's, you know, and
That's
he's like,
funny.
it's one thing because everyone he works with, when I first started publishing, he was telling everyone my wife published this book. You guys got to read it. He didn't know anything about Broken.
Yeah.
He didn't know how graphic it was. And so all these wives of his coworkers and all the clerical girls that he works with started reading my books, and they look at him differently now. And he gets random text from a guy that he works with, and this guy's like, my wife is reading me The Secrets That We Keep. I'm gonna call you Tate from now on. And he goes, so tell me about this Tate character. And I'm like, oh no, they don't want to call you that yet. And he's like, why is he a bad guy? And I'm like, well, they just have not read they haven't, I was still writing Lies at the time. I'm like, they haven't read Lies yet. And he's like, do I want to know? And I'm like, probably not. And so so then I sent her an arc of Lies, and she's like, she gets halfway through it and she's like, I don't know if I could call your husband Tate. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of figured. And then she finishes Lies and she's like, she goes, and this is a little bit of a spoiler. She goes, do you guys have a piano? And I'm like, nope. She's like, you should get one. I'm like, tell me about it. There's a piano scene in Lies. Like I said, I'm not going to give you any details, but I have
Ooh.
commissioned and I have seen the preliminary artwork of this scene, and it is a very not safe for work, and it is very spicy, very good, to the point where when I showed my husband the the mock-up of the artwork that I'm having done, he's like, okay, you're gonna have to read that scene to me. I'm like, I'm gonna read it to you. And he's like, on second thought, maybe you shouldn't. And I'm like, oh no, I'm reading this scene to you.
Um, full sin, you
Yep.
already said
And
it. You already said
yep.
it.
So yeah, it's probably, like I said about spatial awareness, it was my most difficult scene to write,
Mhm.
but it is my favorite scene in that duet. And
Mm.
it's good. Um,
I may pause whatever I'm reading to go
yeah,
finish the
you
duet.
might want to, you might have to. Just it's like a lot of questions are answered. There it is meant to be dark romance, so I will tell you it does get dark. There's a lot of
Bring it
there
on.
is a lot of unaliving in that book. I will not tell you characters.
Hey.
Um but it was a lot of fun to read, right? And I'm very
Yeah.
proud of what I'm very proud of how that book ended. Um, I will say that after that wife read uh, Lies, she's like, "Your husband's totally Devin." So yeah, but yeah, it's like I love it. I'm having so much fun, and I couldn't imagine my life being any different. This is a childhood dream. I've wanted to write since I would in kindergarten, and I even reached out to the elementary school I went to kindergarten in to see if um they had contact information for my kindergarten teacher, and unfortunately she passed away a few years ago. But in
Oh.
kindergarten, I would tell for sharing for show and tell every week. I would take my now, and this is book bookie sacrilege, I know, but I was in kindergarten, so please forgive me, readers. I would take my little golden books and rewrite the stories for the pictures. And then I'd read them to my class. Now, I was also in kindergarten, so I don't think that they were real words, written down, and they probably weren't the original story that I had planned, but I would tell stories. I loved telling stories. It was my dream since I started dreaming of what I wanted to be an author, to be a writer, and to tell my own stories and share them with the world. And I'm doing that now. And, and I love being an indie author. I love the freedom it gives me. And I'm so like it's,
Yeah.
and I write because I love to write. And I think that makes, and I've seen other authors who have, and I'm not going to name names, but one of my favorite authors who is traditionally published, her first book that came out was phenomenal. It was absolutely riveting. It was just a perfect piece of art. And she was actually contracted to write two books, and she hadn't realized. And I found this out later through a mutual friend. Um, the person who was like, "Hey, this person just published a book. I know her personally. Will you should read it. You'll like it." And I read it and loved it. And then this friend was telling me, yeah, because I was like, what happened? Because her second book was a flop. It was, I mean, it did well in
Mhm.
sales, but it was not the quality of writing that she had shown in her first book. And or the books after that, the series that came after that was just fantastic. And she was like, yeah, the second book was kind of forced on her by her publisher because she was contracted to write two books, and
Mm.
she thought she could just, she assumed that that meant she could write any two books. But they wanted a sequel to the first book, and she did not want to write a sequel, but she wrote it anyway because she was under contract. And it just, her heart wasn't in it. And I'm like, it shows. It really
Mhm.
shows that her heart
Yeah.
wasn't in that, second book, because it wasn't as good as and she's like, she's one of my absolute favorite authors. She's a YA author, and I don't read a lot of YA anymore. It just feels
Mhm.
weird because my kids are I have my youngest is turning 17. My middle child just turned 18. And it's like
Mhm.
I like YA romance just makes me feel weird. I'm like, these are my kids' age. And it's really
Mhm.
kind of hard because some of my favorite authors are YA authors, like Stephanie Garber. I have a, I have, I
Mhm.
have a lot of respect for her. I've sat and talked to her in detail. She would come into the bookstore that I work at because she lives in my area. And her, even before I started writing, and just talking to her and hearing her talk about, some of the things she's worked on and some of the things she's working on. And it's like, she's got such an incredible mind. If you haven't read YA
Mhm.
fantasy and you're curious, just wanting to get into fantasy, the Caraval, that series is so fantastic. The world building inside within that trilogy is breathtaking. And
I saw her announcement for the limited edition holiday that's gonna be releasing in November that's red and white, and I I almost cried. I almost cried. I want one so bad. It's
right, me
so
too.
pretty.
When she came in to the bookstore one day, right before her last one for Jax came out, and she
Mhm.
slipped in these little, like, printed from her publisher, these little, like, pamphlets that were like was like a little short story, and just randomly into books. And I'm like, hey, slip me one of those. And she's like, okay. She's like, just don't tell people that they're in here. She goes, I want it to be a surprise, kind of like an Easter egg thing. I was like, okay, I love that idea. And she does things like that for her readers. She's such a genuinely good person. Um, that, like, I love her. And I'll support whatever she writes, even if I don't read it, just because she loves her readers, and she does little things like that just because she can, and because she appreciates her
Yeah.
readers. Because really, whether you're indie published or traditionally published, you know, your readers are the most important part of your book. You have to, if it wasn't for your readers, you wouldn't be writing. And
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
I'm like, I aim to be my goal is to, as an indie author, to get to the point where I can do things like that, where I can afford to do little freebies for my readers. I'm that person that, I'm like, you really want to read my book? I had a reader reach out to me telling me how much she appreciated Broken and Bound and how much she loved them, and that she couldn't wait to be able to buy Secrets and Lies. And I'm like, I'll just gift them to you. When my husband found that out, he was like, "You're supposed to be making money off this." And I'm like, "But she loved the books. I can't help it."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm just I just want people to read read my books. I want to share them with the world. And you know, it's
mm,
it's hard to make money off that sometimes.
yeah. That I mean, I feel like for the most part, every author would feel like it's a labor of love. Like you really and truly, you have to love what you're doing, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into the podcast area because I enjoy talking to authors and getting not necessarily even behind the scenes, but getting to know them more, getting their thoughts and
Yeah.
their feelings on, the stories that they've written and the things that they're going to be doing, and you can feel the joy and the true love that they have for what they've
Yes.
created and the feedback that they get. You can tell how much it actually impacts them
Yeah.
and their life. And for me,
Yeah.
that's
And
everything to really be
yeah,
able
and
to.
it's funny cuz
Mm,
my daughter, like I said, she just turned 18. And she was applying for something. I forget what it was. Or no, she was setting up a new email or something like that. And one of the security questions was, who's your favorite author? And she was like, she put my mom. And I'm like,
I
and
love
and
that.
it made me feel good. And I'm like, I know she's read my books. She was 16 when I wrote Broken.
Mhm.
And I know it's very unconventional, but I let her read it. She's not a big reader, but she's read all of my every book that I've written. And she's just, they are graphic. I'm not going to lie. If you're looking for something that is fade to black or closed door, don't read my books. you but if
Mhm.
you want all that spice, if you, you know, please read my books. But she read my books. My books are the only spicy books that she has read, but she's read them, and she's very proud of me. And she tells everyone, my mom wrote this book. My mom writes erotic romance, and and that makes me that makes me happy. It makes me happy to see that my kids, even my eldest, who's 26, my kids are watching me follow my dream. My kids are watching me,
Mhm.
even if I don't make 100,000 a month on books like some indie authors do, which, I'm proud of them and I'm here to support them. They've probably made a lot of money off of me because I've bought their books. Some of those indie authors I've bought a couple of their books. um, but even if I make $100 a month for the rest of my life on my books, I'm following my dream, and my kids are watching that.
Mhm.
My children, my nieces, my nephews, the grandchildren I'll have someday, because I'm 43. I don't want grandchildren right now. But I do want them someday. My kids aren't ready. But even my grandchildren and the great grandchildren and the great great grandchildren that I'll leave behind, that will come after I've left this world, they will see that legacy that I've left behind. Even if it's just small, even if it's a
Mhm.
tiny legacy, they'll see that I followed my dream and I did what I've wanted to do my whole life. And it'll be an example for them to follow their dreams. I that's something that does keep me going, is even, even strangers that I meet. I'm like, I followed my dream. You should follow yours. Um,
Yeah.
my husband was the first one to encourage me to write my book. And then I talked to a friend of mine who she's become somewhat of a celebrity herself. She was the um I may be wrong. I'd have to look it up, but her name is Meryl Tingstall. She was the first Black woman to ever fly the U-2 spy planes for the military. She was on Tough as Nails season
Ah.
2, which is a reality show. And now she does a lot of she's now a public speaker who goes and does a lot of public speaking for the Black community, for women in, male-led industries. And she's an inspiration. And um she was writing her autobiography at the time that I started writing Broken, and I was telling her about it, and she's like, yeah, you better do this. And she has been one of the greatest encouragements. Her book is called Shattered the Sky. And if you do like autobiographies or nonfiction, go
Mhm.
get that book. It is fantastic, and she is a huge inspiration. Um, and I absolutely adore her. And so she's another person she followed her dreams, and she worked hard. She worked very hard to, break that glass ceiling and to get to where she is now. And she is a huge, like I said, she's a huge inspiration for me. And I'm very proud to know her, and I tell everyone to read her book too, because it's great and she's an amazing human being. Um, but yeah, I just want to see people follow their dreams, and I encourage it.
For sure. Me too. I feel like it's never too late, no matter what stage of life you're in, even if it means you have to readjust your dream a little bit to make it work for where you
Yep.
are. If it's still feasible, if you can make it happen, I feel
Yes.
like it's important. No matter if you're in your 60s, if you're in your 50s, your 40s, or even if you're still in your 20s or you're fresh out of college and you figured out whatever you went to college for
Yep.
is not for you.
Exactly. Or even if you didn't go to I went to college. I got my
That
I
too.
had a travel agent's license. I was a travel agent. Originally, I started college to teach special education.
Mhm.
I was also a teen mom, similar to Sinclair, except for I had my son between the summer between my junior and senior year. And I finished high school as a single teen parent and went to college as a single teen parent. And I was working full time and going to school full time. And my college was offering classes. If you applied for a job at this specific travel agency, they were offering the travel agent classes for free. And so I switched focus because I missed every single one of my son's firsts. I missed the first time he rolled over. I missed the first time he crawled. I missed his first word. I missed his first step. I barely, this is really sad to admit, but I barely made it home for his first birthday because I had class. I had school because I was trying
Yeah.
to give him a future. I was trying not to be I was trying not to be one of the statistics at the time, because in the late 90s, early 2000s, the statistics of teen parents being sick, and this is before MTV started their teen mom reality show. The statistics
Mhm.
of teen parents being successful and providing for their families was very low. And I was doing my
Mhm.
best not to be one of those statistics. So I got my travel agent license. Um, and then 9/11 hit. And, and it changed things. I still kept my job. I still did well, but it changed a lot within the travel industry. And then the internet changed even more.
Yeah.
And then I got then I so my husband and I have known each other since we were kids, but we never dated. He was a good little Christian boy, and I was not a good girl. But we were in our early 20s and we ran into each other, and he took me out on a date, and 3 weeks later we eloped. And again, my husband is my hero. He worked 3 jobs because he wanted me to. I got pregnant short. I found out I was pregnant 3 months after we got married. I was like a month and a half pregnant, just barely pregnant. My daughter is a honeymoon baby. And he was like, "Why don't you stay home?" And he's like, he worked 3 jobs so that I could be a stay-at-home mom until he went into law enforcement. And he was a firefighter, he was an EMT, and he worked at a newspaper so that I could stay home with my son and with my newborn daughter. And it was the biggest blessing. And he's my hero. He has made he has done made sacrifices so that I could see every single one of my dreams come true. And I would not be sitting here with you today if it was not for him. He is my hero. He is my knight in shining armor. And like
I'm gonna cry for
I mean,
you.
I don't mean like I'm not gonna lie, we've been married next month will be 19 years. We've been married almost 20 years and it hasn't been easy. Thank you. We have
Congratulations.
had this past year because I have dealt with a lot of health issues. So along with physical health issues comes a lot of mental health issues, and I have dealt with a lot of that, and it has been taxing on our marriage, but we have powered through it. And that's also why my Lakewood series deals a lot with mental health. It's very important. Like that is something, and I do plan on, I do want to do more for mental health awareness because it is something that is near and dear to me. My father struggled with mental health. My eldest son struggles with his mental health. My eldest son has bipolar disorder. And I share that because he is very open about it. Um, and so I'm not outing him in any way, but it's something that I feel does not have a lot of it's kind of one of those hush hush things. And I don't think it should be.
Mhm.
I think, I think people should be more open to talking about their mental health struggles. And I think that would help more if it was less taboo and more widely accepted. And like, I have OCD. I have clinical obsessive compulsive disorder. It has taken me 40 years. Do not close my door 3 times when I, and it's part of my OCD. I even as a little kid, every
Yeah.
door I closed, I'd have to close it 3 times. I'd open and close it, and that's just part of who I am. I have ADHD. I'm not ashamed of it. I am I am that little dog from that movie Up, squirrel.
Squirrel.
and
Me
and I'm
too.
very
I
open about it. I'm very proud. That makes me who I am. And it's a part of who I am. I have, like I said, broken what's take a lot of the scenes in Broken were taken from my childhood. A lot of Sinclair's childhood mirrors what I went through. Um, my, you know, my parents were addicts. My parents struggled with addiction. They're from their late teens, early 20s until the day each of them died. Um, and it's okay if you end up editing this out. It's okay if you don't. But my father took his own life with an intentional overdose, and that affected my mental health. And and it's I want to be able to talk to people about these things. I want to be able to have my
Yeah.
readers come to me and be like, I went through this. I'm so glad I'm not alone. Because as we're going
Yeah,
through as
for sure.
and I'm sure with whatever you struggle with, you have these moments of feeling like I've got to be the only person going through this. And we do. I do. I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes I'm the only person dealing with
Yeah.
this. But I know I'm not. And I love that my husband reminds me daily, you're not the only person, Crystal. There are others out there, and it's a weird kind of comfort to know that I'm not, to know that there's someone that's going to understand what I'm going through. And, when I'm going through it. And it's like, I want people to, that's what I want with my Lakewood series, is for people to look at my books and be like, I went through that. Like Mia was a cutter. And my editor even reached out and they were like, I really relate to this. And I'm like, me too. I didn't cut. I cut my hair. That was my self-destruction. And I'm a natural
Mhm.
redhead, and my mom always wanted my hair to be really long, and I'd grow it out. But you could always tell when I was going through something, because then I'd show up at school the next day with choppy hair that was up to my ears, and they were like, it was always a bad haircut.
Mhm.
But yeah, Mia went through what she went through, and I want people to come to me and be like, hey, I can relate to this. I want I want my
Mhm.
readers, even if they don't come to me, to read my books and be like, see themselves and see how you can overcome it, and that it is possible. And yeah, that's really what I want
Mm,
people to see in my books and in what I write, is that they're not alone.
that's amazing. And you do an amazing job of that too. There has been a shift. I've seen quite a few different authors who have moved in that direction. A.
Hmm.
Winchester being one of them. She's her with her Burn Boys series. Um she is very much like, mental health. Your mental health matters. The representation of mental health matters, and men's mental health
Hmm.
matters too. Like, it's not just
Yeah.
about female mental health, it's about mental health in general. And men need to be able to have a place where they can step up and say, I'm not okay. And maybe I don't want to talk about it, but I just need you to know, or if you do need to talk about it, you have someone, because there has always been this, stigma around, like, boys don't cry, or you have to be tough, or and then yes, we expect you to be tough, but not in a you can't bring it to someone kind of way. It's never about that, and it's okay if you're not the
Yep.
toughest, because there's going to be some woman behind your back
Yep.
going, well, I
It's
got you. Or there's going to be a friend, you're going to have a guy friend
Yep.
that's going to be like,
And
I
see
got you, and they're
and
going to go
seeing
toe to toe.
that's what I want with Breathless. Like I said, Cal he's in a very dark place right now. He's, struggling with the fact that he has no regrets for what he did, and that he
Yeah.
would do it again, and he sees himself as a monster. And he's dealing with the fact that, you know, he is a monster. And he hates himself, and he has regrets because of other things, because of his past. he's got a legacy to live up to. He had a father who was a doctor, a brother who's a doctor, a brother who was a successful um, real estate agent. You know, he's got these people he's got to live up to. And in his mind, he doesn't measure up. And he's dealing with a lot of self loathing, a lot of self hatred. And he's, he's struggling with his own mental health, and that's where his love interest comes in, and she's struggling too. She's in a dark place of her own, but she's like, no, I got you, I got your back, we've got this.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's what I want. Like each, like, you'll notice each book, when they come out, you'll see that each one of the four books tackles the mental health of different circumstances. Um, you know, and that's what I want with my Lakewood series, is for, you know, for that to, for it to bring awareness to those things. Um, because I feel like, while I love writing and I love writing for fun, my Secrets and Lies was all about just writing for the fun of writing. But, you know,
Mhm.
like you said, and like we've talked about, people read and they want to read something that they can resonate with. And
Yeah.
my Cities of Mayhem is another fun write, but that's because I also want to personally explore that darker side of myself. You know, I love reading dark romance. Like
Mhm.
I revel in the darkest of dark romances. And, you know, and I'm like, you know, I'm like looking at people. I suggest, you know, I have friends who are like, I really want to get into dark romance. And I'm like, read Den of Vipers. It's not that dark.
That's where I started too.
And they're like, you don't think this is that
This
dark?
is
And I'm
scary.
like, no, it's not. I mean, it's graphic, but it's not dark. I mean, I've read
Yeah.
darker. You know, I'm like, you want something dark, something emotionally dark. You know, read St. Abby. I
Mhm.
loved her Mindfuck series, not gonna lie. That's
I need to read it. I have it. I need to
girl,
read it. I just love that her initials
me
spell
too.
stabby.
I cried when I found out she had passed away, because it was a series that
I
my
know.
mother had suggested I read. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. It was sitting on my TBR
Mm.
for like 2 years. And I finally worked up the nerve to read it. And I'm like, it was one of those moments where I'm like, God, I want to call my mom and tell her how right she was, how I really wish I'd have read, you know, I want this. It's a good book. It's a good series.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, and then I just think it's kind of funny. They're like, Den of Vipers is dark. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's entertaining. Yeah. Like if you,
It's fine. It's
right? I'm like,
fine.
you know, and then I'm like, you want to, you know, like going back to Lauren Beale to Hitched. I'm like, go read some Lauren Beale if you want darker. You know,
Mhm.
she's. I love her. I love her books.
This has been so much
Yes, thank
fun.
you.
I loved getting to chat with you and get some
Yes, thank
insight.
you.
We're gonna I'm so excited. Now I have more books to
Yes.
read and things to look forward to, and there have been plenty of recs here. Anybody who's listening, don't forget to check out Chrystal Miller's books. It's going to be super exciting as she gets ready to release this new series. And
Yes,
I guess we'll catch
definitely.
you
I
next time.
will, and I'll keep you posted on Breathless's release.
Yes.
Um my goal is to release it in December.